Welcome again to this Unity lesson. In this lesson we are going to learn a bit more about GUI textures and also create a on-screen menu for use at the beginning of our virtual world based activity, and then also learn a bit about adding scenes to a build that you create in Unity. So to show you where we're going to end up, let me quickly call up an example. Here is the menu that we're going to create in this lesson, and if I play it, what you'll see is that we see a view of what looks very much like our island, and if we roll over the items on the menu, if we click the play one, it's going to take us to our main island scene with the outpost building. Instructions, if we click on that, currently nothing will happen. We're going to work on the code for that in the next lesson. And then if we click on the quit button, if we are using a build that is for the desktop for Windows or Mac or Linux, then clicking the the quit button will quit out of the application. So right now inside Unity itself, really the only one that will function is the play button. So if we click on that, it'll drop us right into our main scene, and then we can go about exploring our virtual world and collecting power cells. So let's get to where we're going to end up from where we left off last time. So for this lesson, what you'll need to do is open up the island scene, the most recent version of the island scene from previous lessons. The last assignment had you creating some power cells that needed to be collected in order to enter into your outpost building. What we're going to do for this lesson is we're going to duplicate this scene, and then we're going to delete a bunch of the objects from the duplicated scene, and then we're going to use that duplicate as the backdrop for the menu scene. To make things a little bit easier before we do that duplication, we're going to organize the items that are in our hierarchy a bit to make it easier to delete the things we don't want and keep the things that we do want. So to do that, please go to Game Object on your menu and choose Create Empty. That will create an empty game object in your hierarchy window, and we're going to rename that game object Environment in the inspector. Now, once we've renamed that empty game object, what I want you to do is drag the following objects into that empty game object. Everything that you want to include in the menu scene that you want to see in the background, we're going to put into that environment object. So basically what we want to keep, or what I'm going to keep, is the terrain. So I'll drag that up in there. I'm going to keep the smoke from my volcano. I'm going to keep the water, and I'm going to keep the directional light as well. And in my case, I'm not going to keep any of this other stuff in that duplicated scene. You may choose to keep the outpost if you want. It's up to you. The generator and so on. Keep the things that you would like to have in that other scene. So for now, that's really all the organization I'm going to do. I've got those pieces inside the environment. So I'm going to save the current scene. And now I'm going to create a new scene and call that new scene menu. So to do that, we're going to duplicate the existing scene. So to do that, you can just do File, Save Scene As, and then type in the name of the new scene. Now, I'm not doing it yet because I want to show you another way that you can also duplicate the current scene. So one way is to save the current scene and then do a Save Scene As and type in the new name. Another way to do it is to go over to the project window and select the current scene inside that project window, and then go to Edit, and then choose Duplicate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that version now to show you how it works. So when I go to duplicate it, in the project window, it's going to create a copy of the scene I had just selected, and it's going to add a number at the name of that scene. So in my case, it called the new scene Power Cell 3. And what I want to do is I want to rename then that duplicate scene. In your case, for your assignment, please call your scene Menu. I've already created one called Menu in order to make the example that I showed a few minutes ago. I've even created a Menu 2, so I'm going to rename mine Menu 3. And the way you can do that is simply click once on the name of the duplicate scene, and then you can type in the new name. So I'll call mine Menu 3 in my case, because I've got multiple copies of the same scene. Once you've named that duplicate scene, then you need to open it in Unity, and you can do that by double-clicking on it, and then it will open it up in the scene in the game view. It'll load it into Unity. And you can check to make sure which scene you're looking at any given moment by looking up at the top of the Unity window. It'll tell you the name of the current scene that's in the view. This is helpful because as you begin to develop projects, it's likely that you're going to have multiple versions of the same scene loaded in your project window, created in your project window, and you'll want to know for sure which one you're working on so that you don't accidentally make modifications to the wrong scene. So we're in Menu 3, which is, for me, the one I want, and you'll be in Menu. Once you've done that, look over in your hierarchy view. Now we're going to go ahead and delete out the objects from this menu scene that we don't need to show in the background for the user when they watch that. And if you remember, I said I was going to get rid of everything, essentially, except for what was in the environment object. So in order to do that, I can select all of the other objects inside the hierarchy view, and then right-click on them and choose Delete. Now, when you delete all the other objects, one of the things you're deleting is the camera. If you remember, in your island scene, you had one camera which was attached to the first-person controller, and it was your eye into that world. So in order to be able to see what's going on inside your menu scene, you're going to need to add in a camera. So go to your scene view. You'll be able to see it here, but if you look at the game, nothing's there because there's no camera to show anything in the actual game itself. So if you go back to your scene view, and we're going to go to Game Object and Create Other and choose Camera. And when you do that, you'll get a camera appear on your island, and it will show a little camera preview. The next thing we need to do is we're going to create our main shot, our view that we're going to use, that the user will see when this menu scene appears in Unity. And what we want is a view of the whole island sort of from a distance. So in order to do that, here's what you can do. In your scene view, you can zoom out until you get a view that's roughly what you'd like it to be, and sort of use your own sense of style here. You can zoom in and out to get that view. Okay, it looks pretty good. Almost, you want to imagine as if you're looking at your island from a distance inside a helicopter. All right. Once you have the view roughly what you would like it to be, what you need to do now is move the camera so that it is in the position where your view is inside the game, inside the scene view. And here's how you can do that. With your camera selected in the hierarchy, go up to Game Object and choose Align with View. And when you do that, you'll see in the little camera preview here that your camera is now in the exact same position, rotation, etc. as the scene view. And if I switch over to the game view, you'll see it looks the same now. Right? Now my camera is out there looking at the island. So far so good. We've got a nice menu scene, and we've not much there. There's an island in it, and then we've got a view of the island. So the next thing we need to do is begin to create our menu for the scene. And the first step for that is to prepare the textures that we're going to use in the menu GUI. So start off by going to your project view, look in your Book Assets folder, in the Textures subfolder, and go down to the Menu Main Title texture and select that one. Once you've selected it, look over in the inspector, and we're going to make one change, which is the texture type. Unity will default to the type of which is texture, which is one of the first one on the drop-down list. But what you want for GUI textures that are going to appear on the screen is to choose the GUI texture type. So once you've selected the GUI texture type for the Menu Main Title texture, then click on Apply, and then the texture will be set up the proper way. Now that we've got that texture set up the way we want it for importing into the game, we need to create a game object, a GUI texture game object. We did that in the last project, and we're going to do it again now. So making sure that you've got the Menu Main Title texture selected in the project view, you are going to go to Game Object, Create Other, and choose GUI Texture. When you do that, you'll get the main title texture will appear on the screen, and it appears smack in the middle of the view. If you are using Unity 4, that GUI texture is only going to appear in the game view. It won't appear in the scene view. I'm using Unity 3.67, I think, and it shows up in that. But Unity has made the decision in the newest version of Unity not to show GUI textures in the scene view, only to show them in the game view. So when you're positioning the GUI texture around on the screen, you'll want to be sure that you are looking at the game view in order to be able to see that GUI texture. So we don't want our GUI texture to be in that position, so we're gonna move it over. So let's go with it selected now in the hierarchy. Let's go over to the inspector, and we're going to change the position to 0.2 for the X, and for the Y we're going to choose 0.8. And that will put it in the upper left-hand corner. Now you'll note that in my game view, if I click on this drop-down in the upper left-hand corner, this allows me to see different views of the game. There's a free aspect view. There are different dimensions, 5x4, 4x3, so on. In our case, let's choose the default web setting, which is 960 by 600 pixels. If you were to save this out to the desktop, a common set of dimensions is 1024 by 768, but you can choose any dimensions you want, essentially. But for now, we'll use the web, and we'll choose 960 by 600. Now let's go back over to our project view, and let's set up the other textures that we're going to use in our menu, doing the exact same thing we did with the title texture, which is to set the GUI, set the texture type to GUI. So just go one by one through all of the textures that begin with the word menu, select them, and then come over to the inspector and choose texture type GUI, and then remember to hit apply once you've done that for each texture. In this case, I've already done it, so they're already set up to GUI, but make sure you do that yourself so that they will appear appropriately in your scene. Once you've made those changes to the textures in your project view, it's time now to add a play button to your menu. So here's how you can do that. In the project window, select the Menu play button, and we're going to perform a series of actions just like we did a moment ago to show the title on the screen. So we're going to select the menu play button, and then we're going to go up to Game Object, Create Other, and choose GUI Texture. Alright, then we need to change the position of that play button so that it's, we're going to move it over toward the left there as well. So I'm going to set my X position to 0.3, and I'll set my Y to 0.55. And I'll move it up underneath our title. So we have a play GUI texture on the screen, but it doesn't actually do anything yet. We need to have a script that's going to then make that GUI texture interactive when the player rolls their mouse over or clicks on the GUI texture. So let's go ahead and create that script now.